Hello, everyone. Juxtaposition here. This will be part two on the FTX crypto exchange financial scandal debacle, featuring Sam Bankman-Fried and and his cohort, Caroline Ellison, age 28. Don't have a birthday on Caroline Ellison. Think that's kind of a red flag. Sam Bankman-Fried was born on March 6, 1992, making him 30 years old. All right? Anyway, those are the two principles of the mass media presentation of what was known as the FTX crypto exchange, partnered with Alameda Research. Caroline Ellison was the CEO of Alameda Research, which was founded in 2017. FTX was officially founded 2 years later in 2019, when it got some love from Sequoia Capital at 2800 Sand Hill Road. Sequoia Capital being a private equity venture capital company, which was founded by, of course, let's all say it on cue, Don Valentine. Donald Thomas Valentine. Right? Does that sound like a mafia organized crime organization? Anyway, stay with me. He's Catholic. He's Catholic. He's the only one in the story who is. Donald Thomas Valentine. Anyway, so we're going to come back to him in a moment. But we always say that behind every great man stands a beautiful woman, right? And so I guess Caroline Ellison has been casted by our clandestine service, talent group, that she's going to be the beautiful girl. So let me just read you a little bit about Caroline Ellison, because it's very entertaining. I mean, look, people, I didn't have any money invested in this deal, so I can laugh and I don't need to cry, because I think the whole thing's just another psyops. Caroline Ellison, born in 1994 with no birth date, is an American business executive, except she's 28 years old, and she became CEO of Alameda Research, I don't know when, at some point between 2017 and today. You should know that Alameda Research, as well as FTX and FTX.com, have formally filed bankruptcy papers this month, November 11th, 2022, in the District of Delaware in federal court. They have filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, if you don't know the alphabet soup of bankruptcy, it's federal law. It's federal law. It's not state. And you have Chapter 7. That's personal bankruptcy, when you can't pay your bills anymore and you seek protection from your creditors. You go and declare Chapter 7. If you're a corporation, which these entities are, of course, right? You have two choices. You have Chapter 11, which is known as reorganization, where the federal judge orders a stay of execution for the creditors so that you don't have to pay people that are demanding money from you, which would be your cryptocurrency depositors and or your venture banking partners, like Sequoia or SoftBank or something of that nature. I'm sure there's other venture capital private equity participants who maybe want their money back, right? Anyway, Chapter 11 will prohibit any refunds of whatever money's left in the checking account. Then there's Chapter 13, federal bankruptcy. That's when you're a corporation and you first attempted a reorganization, but because most of your key employees typically flee to go get jobs elsewhere, they're like rats off a sinking ship, right? So if something better comes along, typically the thing to do in a Chapter 11 is to resign and go elsewhere, because you don't have very good prospects. If you're in the financial services industry, either as a mutual fund, either as a private equity fund or a retail bank, or if you're running an FTX crypto exchange, if you file Chapter 11 paperwork in federal court, you can stick a fork in it. Or as we like to say on my channel, an M7 NATO circa 1964 bayonet. You can put a bayonet, because FTX is not coming back. If it comes back, it'll have to come back under a different acronym. right? So let me read on about this Caroline Ellison, whose parents are Glenn Ellison and Sarah Fisher Ellison, who are both professors of economics at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which was home to Noam Chomsky for many decades before I think Noam finally moved to warmer temperatures in Santa Fe, New Mexico, I believe. All right, so early life. Caroline Ellison is the daughter of Glenn Ellison, who's the Gregory K. Palm Professor of Economics at MIT. And he coached his daughter, Caroline, with her on the math team when she was in middle school, as did her mother, Sarah Fisher Ellison, who's also, like I said, an economist at MIT. As a high school student, Caroline Ellison attended Newton North High School and represented the United States of America in the 2011 International Linguistics Olympiad. Okay, now I've been watching my channel, and you know Noam Chomsky has a linguistics background, but he doesn't ever talk about linguistics per se. He talks about how we should interpret history and vote Democrat. I mean, that's the gist of Noam Chomsky. He basically trashes every Republican president, and John Kennedy he trashed also. He doesn't think much of John Kennedy, the only president who actually said no to the CIA. But Noam doesn't think much of John Kennedy. So Noam Chomsky wants to go on and on and on about how you should vote Democrat. And he doesn't ever talk about linguistics, but linguistics is sophistry. It's the art of applied linguistics is the art of liar, liar, pants on fire. So if you're going to pursue linguistics as a profession and get paid as a professor, or to get paid as a fake historian expert, which you're not, and throw your weight around and get on the William F. Buckley firing line television show, which is a complete CIA presentation, and you can't get on that show unless you're CIA approved. And Noam Chomsky made one appearance on the William F. Buckley show. William F. Buckley, alumni of Yale University and Skull and Bones Secret Society. Noam Chomsky right there on television debating, various topics of the day, like the French colonialism in Vietnam. All right, so anyway, I'm calling Caroline Ellison that she had sophistry training, and she represented the United States of America in a liar, liar, pants on fire competitive event. She then went to Stanford University, where she graduated in 2016 with a degree in mathematics. Ooh, so Caroline Ellison is presented to us as a math wizard because she graduated from Stanford. Well, I know a lot of Stanford graduates too. They're not that good at math. In fact, some of them are very wealthy. In fact, they're so wealthy they don't even know how much money they have. That's how good at math they are. They don't even care. See, if you have enough money, you don't have to be good at math. I know, I'm a financial expert, all right? According to Carolyn's Twitter and Tumblr feeds, ooh, she got a Tumblr account, Caroline enjoys reading Harry Potter books and fan fiction. I have no idea what that is. And she's polyamorous. She's polyamorous. And she regularly used amphetamines. I guess that's past tense, meaning that she doesn't do that anymore. Hey, she's looking at a Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing. She's probably going to be deposed and have to speak under oath. So perhaps you might want to look into the amphetamines use again. If you're confused as to where to get your amphetamines, it's not a problem. Just contact your nearest CIA office, which you could probably find on the Stanford University campus. My God, they had a facility at the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic in San Francisco. They called it the ARP, Amphetamines Research Project in San Francisco. It's across the street from Jesuit St. Ignatius Parish, University of San Francisco, Lone Mountain Campus for Women. It's 2 blocks from St. Agnes Parochial Catholic School for grades 1 through 8. That's where you get your amphetamines. You know, Janis Joplin knew that. George Harrison knew that. Bill Graham, Wolf Grudjanka knew that. Right? Timothy Leary knew that. So, Carolyn Ellison should have no problem finding amphetamines. Not to mention that every single athlete you see on television uses amphetamines on game day for sure, and probably during some of their training sessions as well, along with a boatload of other products, including peptide hormones, which we're not going to get into right now. Anyway, I'm sure that a lot of grad students at Stanford probably use some Pepe products too, Pepe products, to keep them perky for their exams so that you get the good grades at Stanford University, so you can get that big job at the big corporations where they're going to have you do important activities. All right, so Carolyn wants you to know she's polyamorous. That's a code for ethical slut, I'm not really sure. That's what they said about Susan Atkins, you know, who they demonized on the Sharon Tate murder. And Sharon Atkins was an innocent, woman with a very difficult background as a child and as a young adult. She spent most of her life in California State Prison from age 21. And she had a little boy, 10 months old, taken away from her. And that's a sad story. I don't think that Caroline Ellison has any children or a husband at this point. But she looks a lot like a Susan Atkins scapegoat to me. Anyway, so that's the Caroline Ellison story. And the Joseph Bankman story, of course, his parents are law professors at Stanford Law School, which is where Caroline Ellison graduated in mathematics. But that campus is 8,000 acres of land. It's in multiple locations, but the primary campus is quite large. It's at least 4,000 acres is the primary campus where the law school would be, where the psychology department is, where they allegedly did the prisoner dilemma game. Except I personally think that the prisoner dilemma game, financed by the United States Navy, paying Stanford University to conduct experiments, which are now, we're all in, the prisoner dilemma game with COVID mandates, COVID requirements, shelter in place. These are all the problems that a prisoner has when you're incarcerated. And those were studied in the 1970s at Stanford University, I believe off campus. The cover story is it was done in the basement of the psychology department for Stanford. I don't believe that. I think it was done where SRI is located in Menlo Park, which is close by. It's a couple miles away. All right, so it's in a different county. Stanford's in Santa Clara County, and if you're going to mind restructure people using prisoner dilemma game or do psilocybin tests like Timothy Leary and Richard Albert, a Stanford professor, if you're going to conduct tests on people at Harvard University, probably want to do it off campus, right? In case something goes wrong, like with Ted Kaczynski, who was one of their patients, or another student, which happened. And Ted Kaczynski went on to become a Unabomber, and the other child went on to get Timothy Leary and Richard Albert terminated from Harvard University, officially on April 30th, 1963, where they were reassigned to the Millbrook Institute at the Alfred Hitchcock 64-room mansion in Hudson Valley, Millbrook, New York. So they didn't miss a beat. They just went from Cambridge, took their little road show over to the Hudson Valley, New York for a couple of years. And then who's that wackadoodle FBI agent? G. Gordon Liddy. He shows up to make a fake arrest of Timothy Leary. And the next thing we know, Timothy Leary is working with Abigail Folger's mother in Haight-Ashbury, San Francisco, doing his psilocybin CIA-funded game in San Francisco, at age 49, reporting to a 62-year-old, they started in 1965, so they were 5 years younger than what I just quoted. So let's say Timothy Leary's 44, and Enos Mejia, who's Abigail Folger's mother, would have been age 58 at the time that they began the Timothy Leary games, Midnight Climax, etc. in San Francisco, which I believe those games were already underway with different operatives. So Caroline Ellison's parents are locked in, greased into MIT. Caroline is greased into her parents and Stanford University. Sam Bankman-Fried is baked into Stanford University through his parents at the law school, even though we operate under maritime law, admiralty law, and there are no actual laws of the land in California. There aren't. So the whole idea that you'd even have a law school in California is sort of preposterous. I would call that a criminal enterprise similar to FTX, cryptocurrency fraud. Having a law school where you're going to indoctrinate people into something that doesn't exist in real life when we operate under admiralty law, that's a fraudulent scheme that you would collect tuition from people who think they're going to be lawyers. No, they're not. They're going to be tools of an admiralty railroad system where you railroad people and there is no due process. Don't you know that's what a court-martial is? It's a lack of due process. It's an authoritative totalitarianism where you're guilty until proven innocent. That's the point of admiralty law. That's the point of martial law, is that everybody's guilty unless they know somebody and can get out of jail. That's a prisoner dilemma game unto itself. So the main points that I look to in these stories is the media discusses the cover story and they don't discover what you want to know. So everything that you think you hear about from Jim Cramer on CNBC, financial news channel. I mean, he's a social engineering tool from Harvard University and from Goldman Sachs. And you shouldn't believe anything he says. He's a bald-headed Jewish fellow from Pennsylvania who's a social engineer. Mad money. Well, I got that part right. He's completely Mad Hatter. In fact, Jim Cramer should wear a hat because he's bald. He's bald. Bald eagle. A blind bald eagle. Don't be taking your financial advice from a television paid script reader. So, Sam Bankman is a cutout tool. Carolyn Ellison is a cutout tool. FTX is going to go the way of the Anne Heche fiery car crash. I think the shelf life on the Anne Heche car crash was about 6 weeks. And then we don't talk about Anne Heche anymore because they took her to the Grossman Burn Center, which is the furthest away, medical facility. There are 3 hospitals within 3 to 5 miles of her car crash, but they take her 28 miles away to the Canoga Park, porn center of the world, to have cosmetic surgery done. Then she dies. There's no autopsy. Who knows what happened? And I'm here to tell you there was no fiery car crash, so I'm pretty sure she didn't need any burn treatments. So she just got disappeared. And my astute viewers and subscribers think that Sam Bankman-Fried is going to go Jeffrey Epstein bye-bye here in the next 6 to 8 weeks. That's a reasonable assumption. It's a reasonable assumption. Remember, Americans only have the attention span of a gnat. Nobody talks about Watergate. We don't talk about the Francis Gary Powers shoot down, fake shoot down. We don't talk about his murder in 1977. We don't talk about William Egan Colby, even though my friend Steve and I did a 2-hour documentary on William Egan Colby that surpasses anything that has ever been on public television, anything that you've ever seen in film or television. Steve, MK Ultra Now channel at BitChute, and me, Juxtaposition Stories at BitChute, is superior to any content you'll see anywhere. But you know what? We don't have that big of a viewership, right? So, behind every great fraud is a private equity partner. That's the lesson that we should learn. Someone who's never going to be discussed on the mainstream media. Isn't that what we really want to talk about on this channel? Don't we want to talk about what really happened? Well, of course we do. So let's talk about Sequoia Capital, a private equity venture capital company, shall we? Let's talk about who founded Sequoia Capital. Let's do that. He was Catholic. Yeah, he's the only Catholic person in this whole story. I don't know what Caroline Ellison is. They didn't really say what religion or background she has. Everybody else in the story is Jewish. Okay, got a lot of Jewish people in the story, which we're going to get to. But right now we're going to pivot to a Catholic who goes by the name of Don Valentine. He's passed away. Is Donald Thomas Valentine. He was born on June 26, 1932. He died on October 25th, 2019. Now that's an important date, people, because I told you in my other videos on Aaron Valente, age 33, a graduate of the School of Economics at Georgetown University, Jesuit, in Washington, D.C. Erin Valente, she worked at a investment firm in Menlo Park on Middlefield Road, across the street from Stanford Research Center, which is in Menlo Park, the city of Menlo Park. It's in close proximity to Palo Alto, which is where Stanford University campus is. But you see, Stanford University has real estate in, I believe, 7 different counties. You know, 7 different cities and counties. And the Stanford Research Institute is off Middlefield Road in the city of Menlo Park in the county of San Mateo. You know, that's the county where Paul Pelosi killed his older brother David in 1957, I believe. 1956 or 57, when Paul Pelosi was 16 years old, he wrecked his car by the Crystal Springs Reservoir on Skyline Boulevard. It was a sports car, and he flipped it, and they blamed the death upon the neck brace, allegedly, that his older brother, age 19, was wearing. So it had nothing to do with Paul Pelosi speeding at 2:30 a.m. in the morning on a very dangerous road. It's a very dangerous road in the daytime. It's quadruply dangerous at nighttime. And that he flipped the car due to him, his fault, his reckless driving, and his older brother died, but they didn't want it to look like that was a manslaughter case because they weren't going to charge young Paul Pelosi back then in the 1950s. So they just called it an accident. And David Pelosi, you know, went bye-bye. Kind of sort of like Tom Hanks and Jeffrey Epstein and Anne Heche, and perhaps soon Sam Bankman-Fried. All right. Don Valentine died 13 days after Erin Valente's dead body was found. Erin Valente disappeared on October 7th, 2019 at 2500 Sand Hill Road. That is one parking lot away from where Don Valentine's Sequoia Capital is. It's also headquarters to KKR. Now, I realize KKR, which is Kohlberg, Kravitz, and Roberts, that's the premier private equity venture firm for the entire planet Earth. That they are also in 2800 Sand Hill Road, which is where Sequoia Capital Investments is located at 2800 Sand Hill Road. It's a 2-story, very small office building, which means all the bankers that work for KKR and all the bankers that work for Sequoia, they all share the same lavatory restrooms, right? Because I believe they're on the 2nd floor, and you have the buffer zone is on the 1st floor. You got to have a security code to get to the 2nd floor, all right? It's a secured area. It's a military bank facility, right? So it's security. It's a small building, however. But anyway, I'm going to pick on KKR because the last appointment that Erin Valente was to KKR, to Accel KKR, which is a octopus tentacle of Kohlberg, Kravitz, and Roberts. All 3 of those gentlemen are Jewish, all right? 2 of them, I believe, are still alive. One's passed away. Jerome Kohlberg Jr. was deceased on July 30th, 2015. He's from New Rochelle, New York. I'm going to review him. He went to the United States Navy for World War II. He went to Swarthmore College. Then he went and got an MBA from Harvard University. Then he went to Columbia Law School to get an LLB. Then he went to Bear Stearns in Manhattan, right? In 1955, he's at Bear Stearns. Then he goes off to found KKR out there in California. Remember, California is the place you ought to be. So he loaded up the truck and he moved to Beverly, north to Atherton, to Menlo Park, to the Stanford campus, home of SRI, home of Silicon Valley, home to Cisco Systems, Hewlett Packard, Apple Computer, Google, YouTube, Facebook. The creation of all those big companies, National Semiconductor, Raytheon Missile Guidance System, TRW, they're all there. They're all there. Military. Silicon Valley is a military complex. It always has been. It's not about just software and chips. It's about a whole lot of military contracted activities, and it's about private banking. All right, that's why Silicon Valley is a strategically important place, and that is why Jerome Kohlberg would have left New York, where I'm sure he owned multiple homes, and he went out to California to join the younger George R. Roberts, who's first cousins with Henry R. Kravis. Henry R. Kravis and George Roberts are both Jewish gentlemen from Texas. George R. Roberts was from Houston, Texas, went to the Culver Military Academy in 1962. Then he was whisked out to California to the college, Claremont McKenna College, which is also known as the Claremont Men's College, is what it was known for back then. Claremont McKenna College is its name now. It's out at the foot of Mount Baldy near Ontario Motor Speedway, actually where the first Zodiac killing may have occurred in Riverside. It's in close proximity to where there was an alleged first Zodiac murder, which would have happened in 1966, which is when George R. Roberts was attending Claremont McKenna College when Sherry Jo Bates was murdered. Just a coincidence. Anyway, then we have he also worked at Bear Stearns. He went to the Culver Military Academy, went to Claremont McKenna College, then he went to the Hastings Law School in San Francisco, where Camilla Harris went, where Willie Brown went. That's across the street from George Moscone had his head blown off by allegedly Dan White. And Harvey Milk was murdered across the street from the University of California Hastings Law School. That's where George R. Roberts, founder of KKR, went. Then he went to Bear Stearns, which I'm assuming, I don't know if he had they have a San Francisco office. So I don't know which office of Bear Stearns he was in, but he worked for Bear Stearns, and so did Jerome Kohlberg. And then first cousin to George Roberts is, of course, Henry R. Kravis. He's first cousin, and his background is that he grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma. His father was Raymond Kravis, who was partners with Joe Kennedy, who's the father of John F. Kennedy. Raymond Kravis was in the oil business. Joe Kennedy, as you know, was in the Wall Street finance business, as well as Archeo Studios, the company that built the Cielo Drive murder scene for Sharon Tate, was built with the affiliation of John F. Kennedy's father, Joseph Kennedy, who was involved with Archeo Studios when the land was excavated and graded into terraces. We're not just talking about where Sharon Tate was murdered. We're talking about the Doppelganger twin duplication homes directly below and around the corner on Sunbrook Drive and around Ontabella, which includes the Rudy Valentino home where Doris Duke was living at the time that Sharon Tate and Abigail Folger were murdered. Doris Duke was living on the same street as the mailing address, which is Bella Drive. I know the media has done a terrific job of convincing you that it was Cielo Drive, but that's implied linguistics, people. We all know what that means. That means sophistry. It means confusion. It means keeping you off the property so that you can't conduct your own criminal investigation. That's all part of concealment, which is the art of money laundering. The concealment of the sources and uses of money. The concealment of the sources and applications of criminal activities. That's money laundering. Henry R. Kravis then went, of course, to Columbia Business School to get his MBA. So we have the commonality of the three Ks, the KKR, is all three are Jewish. All right. All three worked at Bear Stearns, which, by the way, the Wall Street banking community pulled the plug on Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns simultaneously. Remember that when we had the meltdown? We're going to have another one of those, people. Anyway, Bear Stearns, I had a lot of clients that worked at Bear Stearns, so I happen to know a lot about Bear Stearns before they went bye-bye like Jeffrey Epstein did. I know a lot. I'm not going to get into that. I know a lot about all these firms. I had a lot of clients at Lehman Brothers. I had clients at Goldman & Sachs. I had clients at DLJ, Donaldson, Lufgren, and Jenrette on California Street, San Francisco, across directly kitty corner from the Banker's Heart, the Swiss granite rock sitting there in front of the 555 California Street world headquarters, formerly of Bank of America. The Banker's Heart, you touch it, it's ice cold. They put up a little planter box now so you can't touch the banker's heart like I used to do. It told you everything you need to know about banking. What do you not understand about the word no? Your loan is denied. That's the banker's heart. That's what they did to FTX, don't you see? They torpedoed it. Look, they created it and they destroyed it in 3 years. FTX started in 2019 with Sequoia Capital. It was terminated last week on November 11th, 2022. No more FTX. Terminated. It flamed out in 3 years. My goodness. How does that compare to other Sequoia investments? Well, I'll tell you, one of their most successful investments was Cisco Systems, another Stanford University hatched military complex weapon tool. Routers, switches, local area networks, created and beta tested at the Stanford campus. Shall we talk about Cisco Systems? Hey, I know somebody who worked there for 23 years. I think I know a little bit about Cisco Systems. I had clients that worked there for a long time. Some of them made a boatload of money. The ones that cashed out their stocks did. That's called financial engineering. And that's what FTX is. It's a financial engineering company. Donald Valentine went to Mount St. Michael Academy in New York. And he attended the Fordham University in the Bronx. And then somebody told him he should load up the truck and move to Beverly Hills, that is, swimming pools, movie stars. Except he went to Silicon Valley, where he worked for Raytheon Missile Guidance Systems. Then he worked as a salesman in engineering for Fairchild for 7 years. Then he went to become, I think, vice president of sales at National Semiconductor, which I believe is a Texas-based military industrial complex. Raytheon, Fairchild, National Semiconductor, all military contractors. That's where Don Valentine cut his teeth. He worked at those 3 military contractors. Then he paradoxically founds, with no banking experience whatsoever, Donald Thomas Valentine establishes Sequoia Capital with no banking experience or credentials. He's a salesman for electronics, where they immediately finance Apple Computer, who he found through Atari, video child games, right? Because, see, that's not about military. That's about restructuring the minds of children. He goes on to work on Electronic Arts. That's restructuring the minds of children. It's fake sports, simulated sports, EA. John Madden, remember NFL, EA, NFL football, Electronic Arts? He went on to establish Oracle software company with Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison being the fake front man, because Oracle is a CIA database created by the CIA using Ampex Corporation of Redwood City, which is walking distance to the Oracle headquarters. But it was created across the street at Ampex Corporation Intelligence Services Division, which caters to the CIA. So I'm not really sure I would trust an Oracle database since the CIA paid for it, created it, and Larry Ellison is the one who sold and installed it. Along with SAP, the German-based software designer of a similar product to Oracle, a database for continental Europe. LSI, Cisco Systems, created by Sandy Lerner and her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Leonard Bossack. These 2 PhD students at Stanford didn't exactly come from under a rock. Sandy Lerner was the director of computer services for Stanford University, and her boyfriend, the kind of geeky portrayed Leonard Bossack, he worked in a variety of military companies before he landed back on the campus of Stanford. So let's discuss this a bit, because Leonard Bossack is an extremely important person who we don't know his name, right? He was, again, born with no birth date in 1952 in Pennsylvania, no city. He attended the University of Pennsylvania, and of course he attended postgraduate Stanford University. And he was married to Sandy Lerner, but they did get divorced. And He was a Polish Catholic. He was born into a Polish Catholic family. He graduated from LaSalle College High School in 1969. And in 1973, graduated from University of Pennsylvania School of Engineering and Applied Science. He joined Digital Equipment Corporation, which is affectionately known as DEC. That's a military industrial contractor. In 1979, Leonard Bossack was accepted at Stanford University, and he began his study into computer sciences. During his time at Stanford, Leonard was credited for becoming a support engineer in 1981, the project to connect Stanford's mainframe and mini computers, which is called LISP machines, and Altos. This combination of work led to network routers or switching equipment, I'm paraphrasing a little bit here, to share data from the computer science laboratory with the business school network. Now that's interesting. Why would you care that the computer science school and the business school would be connected? That's kind of creepy. But anyway, that's what they did. They ran the sprinkler lines. They dug up the flower beds and they laid the sprinkler fiberglass tubes from building to building to route wires. Today, it's all probably run on Wi-Fi with the 5G mesh. Anyway, he met his wife, Sandra Leonard, at Stanford. Of course, she's managing, the business school laboratory at the time that they met. And she later goes on to be in the computer, named as the director of computer services. But she was also the business school laboratory manager. And in 1984, they were introduced to Don Valentine, who is the venture capital private equity partner that they sign a deal with the devil. This is analogous to Sharon Tate signing her deal with Filmways, a 7-year contract which represents MGM Studios and CBS Television Studios, Columbia Pictures. Sharon Tate signed a deal with the devil, and she even did several satanic films for MGM, one, of course, being The Eye of the Devil. I don't know how more satanic you can get. Sharon Tate, I think she was 24 years old, did The Eye of the Devil with Donald Pleasance and David Niven in England. And I think that's kind of satanic, and I think that's what you do when you make a deal with the devil, is you do what you're told, right? Take an oath of secrecy, an oath of obedience, and you don't get pregnant, and you don't refuse an abortion, and you don't not renew your contract. Well, guess what happened to Leonard Bossack and Sandy Lerner? They signed a deal, an equity participation deal with Don Valentine, who took immediate control of what became Cisco Systems, which is exactly the same scenario that must have happened with FTX. There is no way that these children, Carolyn Ellison and Sam Bankman-Fried, are going to be able to establish a cryptocurrency exchange endorsed by all the major media outlets who are going to promote it, with Kramer, and all of the financial Fox News networks are going to promote it. And you're going to have all these celebrities on board like Tom Brady and his ex-wife and Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors, which operates in the Mission Bay Nanotechnology Science Center that is the University of California. Sandler Institute is where the Chase Center is, named after a New York bank. You've got a neuroscience center next door to where Steph Curry plays basketball. Sure, that's a coincidence, right? That's in close proximity to where Paul Pelosi was taken to San Francisco General Hospital, renamed Zuckerberg Hospital. The furthest hospital from Pacific Heights, San Francisco. The furthest hospital in the city of San Francisco is in the Mission Bay area, San Francisco General. Where David Smith used to inject amphetamines and LSD into mice when he worked at Haight-Ashbury CIA operation as part of the Amphetamines Research Project, ARP, and part of HAP, Haight-Ashbury Project for CIA. Yeah, he had an office at the San Francisco General Hospital. They filmed Bullet there with Steve McQueen and Robert Vaughn. They filmed Robert Vaughn, who also appeared on the William F. Buckley Show, just like Noam Chomsky did. Yeah, to discuss the Vietnam War. Right. That's right. That's a CIA television show. And Robert Vaughn and Steve McQueen were filmed in San Francisco at San Francisco General, which is where Paul Pelosi recovered miraculously in 1 week from a hammer attack. Most people would either be dead or in a coma for at least 6 months. But no, he's recovered in 1 week. It's amazing. It's almost as if it never happened. All right. Anyway, so Sandy Lerner and Leonard Bostic signed a deal with Don Valentine. They lost control of the corporation. They got a divorce. They liquidated their stock, where they made a couple of $100 million a piece, which was a lot of money, but they own 40% of the company. So they should have had, like 50 or $60 billion. But they were so angry at Don Valentine, and he told them allegedly, as the myth is, don't sell your stock. So today, Cisco Systems has revenues of $51 billion a year. It has around 80,000 employees. They're always firing people. So perhaps it's a lower number now, but they had as many as 80,000 employees, and they had as much as $51 billion a year in sales. They're in their 38th year since Sandy Lerner and Leonard Bostic gave over control to Sequoia Capital Investment. That's who owned FTX. The people that had a grand slam home run, 38 years of success with Cisco Systems, a military industrial contractor of the internet. There'd be no internet without Cisco Systems. It's built on switching equipment and satellites, but without the switches, you can just forget about every part of the internet. So I'm telling you that the people who really created the internet, which was done at a beta test site on the Stanford University campus, they lost control of their company and got divorced, very unhappy, very bitter. And if you can be bitter and have, over $100 million. But the thing is that they despised Don Valentine. And Don Valentine died, 13 days after Erin Valente's dead body was found in her Nissan Murano rent-a-car, which was, her last appointment was at 2500 Sand Hill Road, where she was seeing a Harvard alumni with a Stanford MBA who wasn't just anybody. He was a managing director of a subsidiary of KKR. So what I want to tell you is that when you sign a deal like Sharon Tate did, or you sign a deal like the Beatles did when in 1962 they signed a deal with EMI, or when if your name is Leonard Bostic or Sandy Lerner and you sign a deal with Don Valentine at Sequoia, or your name is Sam Bankman-Fried, and you sign a deal with Don Valentine, he takes 100% control of your company. And everything that happens after that is on Sequoia, which is everything's done privately in a conference room at 2800 Sand Hill Road. One parking lot away from Erin Valente was murdered. She was murdered next door to Don Valentine. And he died 13 days after she did. So is he related to her death? I don't know. I mean, that's where he worked. He was 87 years old. I don't know how active he was. But I can assure you that whoever works next door at 2500 knows something about the Erin Valente situation. It's not hard to find, the Stanford alumni, Harvard alumni, because that's who she met with for 90 minutes. I wonder if he offered her a cup of coffee or a cup of tea or a glass of water or a bottled water. You think? She couldn't find a rent-a-car when she left his office. It's right there where Sequoia is, right there where Kohlberg, Kravitz, and Roberts are, which is a Jewish-based company. Jerome Kohlberg, Jewish, United States Navy, Smartworth College, Harvard MBA, founder of KKR, worked at Bear Stearns. George R. Roberts, Culver Military Academy, Texas, Houston, Texas, Claremont McKenna College near Ontario, in East Los Angeles way, under Mount Baldy. University of California, Hastings College of Law, San Francisco, across the street where George Moscone had his head blown off in 1978, where Dianne Goldman Feinstein became mayor, right across the street from where George R. Roberts went to law school, which is a joke because there's no laws in this country. Everything is maritime law, meaning martial law. All right, so Henry R. Kravitz, he is the first cousin to George R. Roberts. And he also, he was in Oklahoma, Tulsa. His father's partners with Joe Kennedy with the RKO Studios. He goes to Claremont McKenna College. He studies economics. He goes to Columbia Business School to get his MBA. So it's Fordham University, it's Claremont McKenna College, or Claremont Men's College. It's Hastings Law School. It's Columbia Law School. It's Columbia MBA. It's Harvard MBA. These are the schools. It's Stanford University. These are the schools, the indoctrination center for private banking and clandestine services. Including MIT, including Yale, including Princeton, including University of California systems. That's San Diego, that's Irvine, that's UCLA, that's Davis. They operate on animals up there, agriculture, horticulture, animal husbandry. Davis, Berkeley, Emeryville, Chiron, Cetus, the inventor of the PCR procedure, which is the DNA collections procedure. That's owned by Cetus, sold to Chiron, sold to Bayer, sold to Novartis, who also bought Sandoz Labs, LSD. So the Timothy Leary's products are owned by Novartis. And PCR tests are owned by Novartis, who basically owns Emeryville. And those products were financed by private equity firms in the Sand Hill Road zip code. And I'm going to name specific ones that Don Valentine's involved with. Apple Computer, you might have heard of them, right? He found Steve Jobs over at Atari and plugged him into Apple. These people that don't really have a formal education, like Steve Jobs did not. He never graduated from college. Larry Ellison is a college dropout. Bill Gates is a college dropout. How could they go on to be the founders of these billion-dollar companies? And the answer is they can't. They're the front person. They're the fake leader. They're the Brian Epstein is to the Beatles what Steve Jobs was to Apple. He's the fake leader. But RCA Victor and CBS are running the Beatles through EMI, through British intelligence Tavistock narratives. British intelligence. That's who's running the Beatles. And out in California, you got Frank Zappa. He's controlled by the same people, who control Neil Young and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and the Mamas and the Papas, and John Phillips, Michelle Phillips, Cass Elliot, Abigail Folger, Rand Corporation, Henry Kissinger, Bob Evans, Roman Polanski, Jerzy Kaczynski, Wojtek Frykowski, Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, the Eagles, Linda Ronstadt, Jerry Brown, Governor Moonbeam. They're all controlled through Hollywood, Warner Brothers, Columbia Broadcasting System, Columbia Television, Columbia Records, RCA, where Jose Menendez worked before he got into the porn industry, RCA in New Jersey, RCA. That's right. It's all connected. And so we had 3 Jewish men from the New York area, and they all came out to California to get into the private venture capital business. And they have contacts at military industrial corporations in Silicon Valley, including Raytheon, including National Semiconductor, including Fairchild, including TRW, including Cisco Systems, which they created from birth, including FTX, which apparently they decided to pull the plug on that and turn that into a social engineering staged event. Because apparently you can't turn off the discussion of this story about the polyamorous Caroline Ellison, because that's a salacious story, right? That's what they did with Sharon Tate's cover-up. Instead of talking about the M16 NATO issue circa 1964 weapon that killed Sharon Tate and Abigail Folger, they want to talk about that Susan Atkins is a slut and she did porn and nude dancing in San Francisco. That's what they're saying about Caroline Ellison, that polyamorous is code for that she's a slut. And she uses amphetamines, which is code that she's a drug addict. And Sam Bankman has hair that looks like he was accidentally plugged into an outlet by Timothy Leary for an electroshock treatment, right? So they're making Sam Bankman Fried look like an imbecile. He's 30 years old. and Caroline Ellison is 28 years old. These are kids. They are not sophisticated people. They don't have the experience to run a money custody and clearance exchange. And 90% of people on Wall Street don't have the talent and ability and skills to do that either. They're sales-based. It's a sales-based business. It's promoting sophistry. It's applied linguistics. It's greater fool's theory. That's what Jim Cramer is. Jim Cramer. He's in the applied linguistics business. He went to Harvard. He worked at Goldman Sachs. That's a sales corporation. They're pitching. They put lipstick on pigs and present it as an Arabian racehorse. That's merchant banking. You know who told me that? A guy who makes $90 million a year told me that. I'm not going to say he's wrong. He makes more than I do. So, and they say in banking it works until it doesn't work anymore. So if you follow my videos, you will start to lose whatever little confidence you had in banking when you realize what a scam it is. Hey, watch The Wizard of Oz, released in August 1939. Watch the 16-year-old Judy Garland and the much older man, Frank Morgan, who played the not-so-mighty Wizard of Oz. And you'll learn everything you know about yellow brick roads and Sacred Heart convents and habits and the Wicked Witch of the East named Evelyn, and the Wicked Witch of the West, which I'm going to call 2800 Sand Hill Road, Wicked Witch of the West headquarters. Her name was Evil. And by the way, you know, down the hill from the Sand Hill Road address that I just gave you, where Aaron Valente went missing at 2500 Sand Hill Road, and where Sequoia Capital and KKR are located at 2800 Sand Hill Road. I realize that they have offices in San Francisco and Chicago and New York City, in Manhattan. But I'm telling you that these knuckleheads, they have homes all throughout the world, but they mainly like to spend time in California because the weather's better here. But down the hill and around the corner onto Valparaiso, you have the Convent of the Sacred Heart Order, where they used to wear the wardrobe from the Wizard of Oz, from the Wicked Witch of the East and the Wicked Witch of the West, which is Evil and Evelyn. They were sisters. And that is the wardrobe that was worn where Abigail Folger's mother went to school on Valparaiso, which is walking distance to where these venture capitalists are located. It's less than a mile away. You go past a Whole Foods, around the corner, and you got to climb up the hill. Erin Valente's last climb up the hill before she was murdered. On or around 2500 Sand Hill Road, murdered, age 33, same age as Dakota Johnson is today. Back on October 7th, 2019. So I'm going to leave this video on Erin Valente's last words recited by her mother, who was living in New York City at the time of this phone call, which was about 1 a.m. East Coast time, 10 p.m. Sand Hill Road time. And it was, it's all a game where it's a mind experiment. We're in the Matrix. Click off. Erin Valente's last words at age 33. Her last visit at 2500 Sand Hill Road, one parking lot away from Don Valentine's office, who dies 13 days later. The founder of Sequoia, who founded FTX, and I believe who tanked it. Because if you can give birth to it, you can kill your child. And on November 11th, 2022, FTX and Alameda Research filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy papers, which pretty much, sticks a fork in it. In this case, because it's clandestine services, it's going to stick an M7 bayonet into FTX crypto exchange. Because nobody, and I mean nobody's going to invest in FTX ever again. If it comes back, which I'm sure it'll come back in some other form, it will be the same founders, but a different name. Thanks for listening. Please hit the like and subscribe. Have a great day.